Alrighty, we are live-ish enough. Alright, so I know I made a video yesterday. It's not really the point. The point is that this video is specifically going through the first two phases, which are project definition and then creating the user stories for the beginning of the project. This is something that I really should have done before I started working on the project and didn't make a prototype, didn't make a second prototype, and didn't start working on the back end and all the rest of it. So this is really just more or less catch-up work on the things I should have done a while ago. So this is a document I created, and I'm still working on creating the actual document formatted. I introduced it a little bit last time. TLDR, I've been working on this project. This is a Pomodoro timer. It is one of a few different projects that is, practically speaking, a visual way to keep track of your focus and break time so that you can stay mentally fresh. So that's the idea, the whole project, and this document goes in a little bit better into what the project is going to be, what I want it to be, and things I wanted to include into it. So I worked very hard on paring all of the introductory questions down to, I think there's 8 questions, which really just get an overview of what the whole thing is. So let's look at that. So the first thing is why we're doing this. Like, why does the solution need to exist? Is there any alternatives? Like, do I really need to make something and go through all that effort, or like, what's up with that? So I would say that for me, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, because the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was trying to create a clone of something that I use regularly, an application called Clockify, which is just a time tracking software that lets you do, works with project based, so you can just press a timer. It creates what I'm going to call a session, and then it records time. You press stop, and you can attribute that to anything, and it's got a lot of different views. It's got a lot of different summaries and graphs and cool stuff like that, and you can set billable hours differently for each of these different projects, which is great for me because I have like multiple different clients who have different billable hours and different like goals for each of those clients. So being able to manage all of that in a single application is great. So Clockify is this thing, and I realized that when I was first starting to create this stuff, I was mentally like, I want to create a clone of this. Like, I want to make my own version of it, add my own features. But what I realized is what I really need is a system to track the most productive hours of the day. And to find patterns with those most productive hours. So the idea being, this is like the primary feature here, is that there are certain hours of the day that are more productive than others. And I think that depends. This is kind of like my personal theory based off of the research that I've done, is that, like, of course, there's like an hour or two after you wake up. That's typically, for most people, the most productive 1 to 2 hours. But then if you take a certain amount of breaks, then you can be more productive for longer. So for me, it's like figuring out the best hours to focus and to work on things, and then also the best combination of breaks and focus sessions for long days. Like, is it better to have 25 minutes of focus time and then 5-minute break, and 25-minute focus and 5-minute break? Or is it better to have 45 minutes of focus and then a 10 to 15-minute break? Like, how does that change over the course? So that's one thing that I was like, this is something that I haven't, like, there's timers out there and they can do this, but they can't log it, and I can't see the difference and get insight from that. So that's kind of one of the big ideas I had. The other thing was creating, and this is going to be mentioned here in a second, is being able to track accomplishments. I mentioned this a little bit last time in the last log, but Clockify only tracks time, and you can tag it and put projects on it, but you can't add a description of what you did. So I think of this mentally as like a git commit message, where you can add like a list of, here's the features that I worked on, here's what I did, like da 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 da. And then I can go back, and when I'm looking at these different sessions and these different logs, I'll be able to say, okay, just copy and paste this, and have like a log book, basically like a working book. And I can send that to clients and all that sort of stuff. So that's the idea behind this. And then the second question, what are we creating? And I've kind of described what I'm thinking it's going to look like, is a time/focus/accomplishment tracking app. Because that's really like time tracking app, yes. And Clockify does a great job of that. So does Toggle, so does Rescue Time, and a few others. But focus tracking is a lot more, I haven't seen that done really well. Rescue Time does automatic tracking, and we'll get to these other apps that I'm talking about in a second. So really being able to track the ratio of on task / off task during a working session. More or less, this is focused mode versus diffused mode, which is the two different modes that your brain flips back and forth. And it's like, everyone needs to take a break. And I think that's one of the lessons that I've realized. And being able to account for that, and how do you use that? Like, how do you use breaks effectively is another big question that I want this to solve. So sessions will be tracked and viewed later. So target audience, really myself, but if I were to take myself out and be a little bit more broad, freelance and knowledge workers who are looking for insight into their work, into their most productive time of the day, so that you can plan and evaluate and measure with that information in mind. So experiences that will be valuable to this group of people. I love one-click tracking, being able to just press start and then press stop. So it's really more than one click. But the idea is you press start and then we create a session, and I don't have to go in and fill out a whole bunch of extra stuff. I can do that later. That lets me just like instantly get, and there's a few other ways this is implemented too, like having, creating like a preset session that you can use from another one is great. Being able to track money earned during the session. I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but I don't know how much of a feature. That's probably going to be a V2 feature if I do end up doing it. The accomplishments notes is something I have not seen in other applications associated with these time boxes. So that's something I definitely want. That's definitely valuable, just for me personally. But for this group, I could see being able to do analysis on sessions and being able to see and compare them to other ones. That's going to be beneficial. Comparing and tracking sessions over time, that's kind of what I just talked about. Easy to identify patterns kind of fits in here. Having a timer or reminder to stretch and break, like making sure you're not sitting for a whole bunch of hours on end, making sure you have something to remind you to get up and stand and stretch, get water, and all that sort of stuff. So that's what I think would be valuable. Additionally, what are people using? Like, what am I using right now to accomplish these things? Clockify, I've talked about this for the past couple minutes. Toggle is another alternative that I used for a long time. I ended up using, I should have added this, Google Spreadsheet. Literally just creating a new like row with information like, okay, here's the project I'm working on, start time, end time, like a small list of accomplishments. I used that for a while, and then I moved on to Toggle, and then I moved on to Clockify. That's what I'm using right now. Rescue Time, I paid for Rescue Time in order to like try it out. I think I paid for like a year and got a pretty good deal on it. But Rescue Time's basic features are, it checks what applications are running on your computer and how long they're in focused mode, which is different for a computer state. It's when it's full screen or when your mouse is active on that thing, and then it keeps track of that. And then every time you click off or go to a different website, if you're ever on a distracting website, which you can add your list of distractions, it will let you know, and like you can see detailed analytics of how much time you're spending on task on these like applications that you specified or focused tasks, and then what are distractions, how frequently are you going to distracting sites, and then even implementing like blocking of distracting sites. So Rescue Time does that automatically, and it really focuses on productive time and focused time. Like your goal is to hit 4 hours of focused work a day, or at least that's my goal that I use it. Timelines was a tracker app, time tracker app that I used, very simplified, aesthetically pleasing, but very simplified. Features that I want from these competitive apps: one-tap tracking, mentioned that. Project management with different colors, hourly, like different things associated with that, being able to sort by projects. That's a lot of what Clockify and what Toggle and like these big apps do, and it's going to take a lot of effort, and I don't know if that's maybe like a version 2. A summary view for the week/month. I think this is, so that's one of the things they have. Session management, which is really just, I call session anytime you stop and start, or start or stop. these time blocks, basically. Distraction tracking is mentioned in rescue time. Session filtering, be able to sort through your previous sessions. So those are the things that those apps have. How will this app, the Pomodoro bar, be different from those apps? Manually being able to track productive and break times. Rescue time does it automatically, but I think that I want to do it, and I think I can only mentally think of how to do it, if that makes sense, manually, because I'm not going to build some automatic system. It's already been done, and they've got like a whole team working on it. I'm just a single guy that's working on this. Description of sessions. That's the notes. It's basically, I'm thinking literally just as simple as it can be. It's going to have a name, it's going to have a description, and it's going to be a big text box. You can add like, the only thing I'm going to let it do is, in terms of like design wise, is you're only going to be able to add either unnumbered list or text, and that's it. New line characters, maybe, but that's going to be it. No other features than that. It's going to be bare bones. What type of devices am I going to test for? Like, what do my users use? What do I use? And when I'm building and wireframing out the site, what am I going to keep in mind? I use primarily 4 devices. My phone, iPad mini, which I use a lot of the times for reading, and for when if I'm using my laptop, I might have that open on the side for another browser or something like that. And then laptop, my laptop's a 1K screen, but I also end up using my side monitor is another one, and I wrote down the dimensions of that, 1436 by 1333, and that's just what I have it by default. I can make it smaller, I can make it bigger, all that sort of stuff. And then 4K desktop, that's what I use like all the time. So now we get onto user stories. So that was the project definition. That's where I'm wanting the app to go. And this is user stories. This is basically scenarios and use cases that I want to either include and think about. And I only did, I want to say I did 8 or 9 or something like that. And the idea is that I will eventually be adding more, but I just want to walk you through some of them. So it's really just a description of how the app works from a user's perspective, and not, because I normally would start by thinking of the technical side. Like, okay, I want to create sessions. Okay, I need to store the sessions in the database. I need a button. I need the UI. I need to design that. I'm simplifying it down to, okay, the user just sees a button, they press it, it does all that other stuff in the back end. The user only thinks about this thing. So one of the things, so first thing is I wrote that I wanted to, as a user, wanted to track time for projects, which really is just a different way of saying I want project management. And when I wrote this, I was thinking, oh, I'm just tracking my time. And then I wrote on projects, and that changed things. So ignore this one. This one's redundant. It's added later. The second user story is I want to be able to track my accomplishments per session, which is really just a way to say notes, so that I can send performance updates easier, which is what I do with basically all of my clients. And I have a end of the month where I do a review of all the things I've worked on. So being able to see my accomplishments in list form would be great for a week scale and for a monthly scale. I also have importance on here. I added importance and feasibility. Normally you don't, I realized that you can't see the, you can't see the story points for this one, but it's 3. And I'll explain why it's 3. So importance 8, I feel like this is, the accomplishments is one of the things that sets apart this from other time tracking apps, but it's not the most important thing. It is something that sets it apart, yes, and something I find useful, but it is not the most important thing for the core functionality. It's a 6 out of feasibility because I haven't dealt with storing or manipulating or formatting large text box data. So that's going to be difficult to work with. Story points 3. So I'm not going to, there's other, if you're interested in what story points are and how they work, I recommend there's an Agile, it's basically based off of Fibonacci sequence story point numbers. The idea is you have 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and you bucket all of the stories and all the things into those categories. 2 is twice as difficult as 1. 3 is 3 times as difficult as 1. 5 times as difficult. So you can easily compare amongst the two. I say this is a 3 because I think that it's not super difficult. It's like a smaller medium. It's just the difficult part is going to be the database, creating that element for it. How do you visually display it? And how do you do formatting options? So the next one, so I want to be able to track productive/break time. That's another one of the core features. It's not like the most important thing. That's why I put in an 8. And the idea is that I want to avoid, as a user, I want to avoid overworking myself and doing like 2+ hours of focused work when I just, at some point, I think for me, I've realized sometime past an hour, if it's like an interesting problem, sometimes past an hour is when I lose focus. So being able to like see a reminder that I've been focusing for an hour will let me know that I need to take a break, which will recharge me and let me work better. So that's a really important feature. It's not that difficult, partially because I've already kind of been working with this idea and toying with it for a while. So I put that as a 3 because I am going to create the log. So session is the entire start to end. Log is going to be within a session. So log would be your focus time and your break time and your focus time. So I need to create a different model for logs, which is why I put it at 3. I did originally put it as 2, but I need its own model, and I need to figure out how I'm going to view and implement that into the UI. So that's why I put it at an 8 feasibility. So it's a 3 story point. Second or fourth user story, a timer to remind me to take breaks. So the timer used to be and is currently in the prototype that I have right now is incorporated hand in hand. They can't be taken apart. The timer is a part of the productive and break time thing. I want to break them apart and just have a timer that is separate from productive and break time. They're going to work together, but they're not going to be reliant on one another. So you can optionally have timers or not. You can also utilize the timers for your 25-minute timer of focus and let the time go past that 25 minutes and then 5-minute or however many minute break. So you'll be able to control that time. That's going to be relatively easy, I think. And the whole reason I want this is so that it can stay fresh and get more done in the long term. I said that. So 2, I don't think this is going to be too difficult to implement because I'm thinking timer is really just going to be they're going to put it in as a number input. And then what's going to happen is it's just going to create a time. It's just going to create like a date that has a time associated with it. And when that date/time comes, then it's going to create an alert, which is going to be like a noise, change the color to a slightly darker shade to let you know you're past your time. And then that's it. That's all it's going to do. So it's going to be relatively easy. And then you can reset the timer every time. I'm going to have to figure out how you reset the timer because that's going to be difficult. Some more user stories. Create and manage projects. This is why I said the other one was redundant. I put it as a 5 because technically I can get everything I want out of this without projects, without the monetary tracking, without the colors and because projects are its own data model. It's its own management system. It's going to need its own view. It's going to need its own validation. It's going to need all this other stuff. So while it is super cool feature to have, it's not the main thing. The main thing is the focus time and the accomplishments. So feasibility is a 4. I said that just because there's so much features associated with it, and that's why I gave it an 8 of story points. The X on this one is because I don't think that this feature, I think I'm going to say that unless I dedicate a lot of time to this, I'm not going to do this. I basically said I'm going to avoid working on this unless I get $1 billion and I've got nothing else to do. So as a user, I want to be able to see my sessions on a calendar. and so that I can view and compare them, my recorded time, my recorded session time versus my planned time on my calendar. Importance is a 3. It's not essential to the core of the project. Feasibility is a 3 because what I want to do with it is it's going to need some sort of calendar integration, which means that you're going to deal with either Google validation, because that's what the Google Calendar is what I use, or Apple Calendar, all the rest of that crap. So all of that, I know there's public APIs and I know there's a way to do it. I just think that I see that as being a big hurdle and spending a lot of time on that when I shouldn't. And then also, how do you view the calendar? Does it add calendar like events to their calendar? Like, how does it work? How do you view it? Calendarly, or Clockify, as I said, was one of the ideas where I got this from, has integration with Google that shows your calendar on the right-hand side and shows, so it's like calendar and then your tracked sessions, and it shows it right next to each other. Really cool, beautiful design. I really love that. I don't think I'm going to use it. I put it as an 8 because that's going to be that's probably going to be like 4 times as difficult as some of these other things. Then the next one, as a user, being able to edit past sessions so that I can adjust time, untracked time. I find that what I like to do is I round up, but I manually round up in terms of like, oh, I worked for 43 minutes. Okay, I'll round that up to 45 because I like to have it in increments. And I'm sure you could do it automatically. A lot of things let you do it automatically, but that's not the point. I like being able to have that control. Also, if I need to remove time because I was off task. So it's another thing of the productive/break time. If I find that I'm off task for too long, I have to stop, go back, and truncate my work because I was off task. And that's how I mentally work, is if I get too far off task, then I stop, truncate it. Either I need to take a break or deal with something, and I'll come back and I'll start a new productive session. So this is fairly important because I think that you should be able to create, like, sessions should be an editable thing. It shouldn't be once you finish a session, you just can view it but not edit it. Technically, edit should also include deleting sessions and creating sessions that are just technically time, like start and end times. So I'm gonna have to think about that because those are different cases that I haven't really thought about. Creating, as a user, wanting a weekly update of tracked sessions and accomplishments so that I can see my progress and feel that I'm on task. That involves creating an email update, basically. So that involves, one, an emailing service. I already have an emailing service set up with the current project. However, I see that as dealing with the views for that, dealing with all that stuff is, again, another integration API thing. Not a core feature, maybe like a version 5, but definitely not anytime soon. And as I'm not seeing this project getting to a version 5, I'm just gonna say I'm not gonna add that feature. I can manually go back, and as long as I can go back and view my accomplishments and the times, I can just manually add that stuff. As a user, I want to be able to create a session with 2 clicks, and so that I can track my time. I realize that I kind of missed the core feature of this thing, which is being able to create sessions. So that's start, stop, session, done. So that's actually a great place to end. This is the last one I have here. I know these videos are getting extra long, but you can kind of see, and I'll walk through my process here. So that is the feature. In terms of if we were to go back and look at of the features that I'm really gonna, so I'm gonna say that this is version 1 of this project is only what's here, what's listed here. So let's see, we got 3 plus 3 is 6 plus 2 is 8. We're gonna say we're not gonna do version 2, so that's then plus another 2, so that's 10, 12. So in total, from the user stories I've created thus far, I've got 12 story points worth of work to do, which I think is accomplishable. I think I can do it. I think that I, at max, can probably only take one user story a week, just because my time is not that fluid. And I'm only spending a couple minutes on this each day. So I'm going to work on user story 9. That's the most core essential feature. I've already got most of it kind of working. I've already been kind of messing around with some UI designs, but I think I'm going to change. What I'm going to do is right now, I'm going to focus on getting the back-end part of this working and getting just a single button that does exactly what this says. I'm not going to worry about visually being able to see a session yet. I'm only focusing on this. That's going to be this week. I will let you know next week how far I got on that, if I finished it. If I did finish it, did I do more? So that's basically next week. Devlog 2 is going to be about that. So I'll see you next week, and hopefully I actually get this done, because if I don't get this done next week, I'm going to be a little bit in trouble. But I think partially because I'm spending a lot of time building up the project is going to be why this is taking so long. So instead of focusing on like the actual project management part, I'll be focusing on the actual project itself like the next couple weeks, and then I'll be able to reevaluate every week or so where I'm at. So yeah, I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.